grab a bolster. If you don't worry about it. It's not required for today. You can set up a bolster with like either rolling up a blanket really tight and kind of making it like a foot like thick or something, like, you know, roll it up tight and then wrap a strap around it. But yeah, no stress if you don't have anything, because all the poses you can get out. So okay, so we're starting off today laying all the way down onto our bellies. And once we're down on our bellies, the elbows can go nice and wide. We're stacking our hands to create a little pillow so that the forehead has something to rest down onto. This shape is extremely powerful for helping our spine start off in a good amount of traction. And I love to feel my belly breathing into the earth when I'm in this shape. And so see if you can take several good relaxing breaths to help calm the body, calm the belly, and just feel that almost like a wave of the ocean, that very gentle, soothing flow. Huge inhales into the belly. And wonderful slow exhales. As we're staying here in this pose a little bit longer, I'm going to take a moment to help us connect with our intention for today. Every day this week, we've been focusing on different chakras, different energy centers in our body. And so today we've come to the sacral chakra. This is the chakra that represents creativity and sexuality, and just kind of it's how we flow and move through our life. And so think of the element of water and think of how it flows so easily in and out of things. That's kind of how creativity helps us. It can help us not just when we're trying to come up with an art project, but it can also help us in our specific things that we're going through in life to have creative solutions so that we don't have to, you know, just do the same thing we've always done our whole life. And so these are the different energies that we'll be working with in this nice, gentle practice. And the big focus for when we're working on the sacral chakra is opening up the hips. So you'll start to notice there's quite a few of the movements that we're going through today that are specifically focused on the hips. And so let's just enjoy this resting down on the belly for another 5 slow, deep breaths. Huge inhales, belly coming down to embrace the earth, and wonderful exhales receding away. From here, the very first gentle movement that we'll take is essentially a half frog pose. So we take this left knee and we begin to scoot it up closer to the shoulder. So the left knee is bent, the right leg is still long to the ground. And that left knee scoots up as close as it can get toward that left shoulder. Now at this point, you can either stay with the forehead directly down to the earth, or if it feels nice to give the neck just a gentle stretch, you can let your right cheek go down, left cheek up. And we're off to this side where we get to breathe and notice how the belly breath has changed just a little bit. It's not significantly different. We still can breathe into the earth, but the one hip being higher makes the experience just a little bit different. As I'm laying on my belly, I find it very natural to take on the Ujjayi breath. This is a breath where the throat is lightly contracted So it's almost like an ocean wave. You can hear it coming in and out. A lot of times when people try to make a Darth Vader breath, this is exactly the noise that they're trying to make. And so this is what we're trying to go for with our gentle breath. It's often not super audible, but it should be audible enough that you can hear that gentle ocean wave. Got about 1 more minute on this side, so if there's any adjustments you'd like to make, such as trying to bring the knee even a little bit higher or swinging the foot a little bit up to the side, that might be places where you can play with. Just being playful with the body. How can I start the process of opening the hips here? We're not starting off with the deepest hip opener, but we should be feeling just a gentle opening going on. And here I'd like us to take 1 more slow inhale and a relaxed exhale. And with that exhale, begin to return this left leg all the way to the back of the mat again. And we start feeling into our second side. The right knee begins to raise off to that right side. The inner part of the knee is down. If we had the right cheek down before, flip it over to the left cheek. And begin to allow that gentle process to happen, that gentle opening for this hip, just like we did nice and patiently for the other side. We're laying here so connected to the earth element, so grounded. Begin to raise the energy up. We don't want to just stay in the earth because the earth can be a little lazy sometimes. And so when we raise the energy up to the element of water, we start to add more motion, a little bit more flow. And so what I'd like us to consider as we're here, just in this nice initial pose, is starting to ask ourselves, what are the areas of my life that need creativity? So this could be different struggles that you're going with that you need to have a more creative solution than you've been experiencing so far. This could be in relationships, for instance. You could also literally be working on different creative projects right now. And so just thinking in your mind's eye, what in my life needs creativity? What areas can I add a little bit more flow rather than having that same stagnant energy that I've always had? our last huge inhale right here. And with our wonderful exhale, begin to return this knee all the way down. We find our hands joining under our shoulders. Pressing our way up, we take a child's pose. I want us to be able to feel the hips a little bit. So sometimes people can definitely feel the hips if the knees are all the way together in child's pose. But for me, I get slightly more into that hip area by making the knees about as wide as the mat and then resting my way forward. Feel how this gets low into the back, low into the hips. See if you can continue to release the muscles as we're staying here for a period of time. I love doing this child's pose early in the morning. It's my back is never tighter than first thing in the morning. I kind of wake up and it's, you know, that staying still all night long definitely affects the muscles. And so here we're giving it a long, slow chance to gradually lengthen, gradually release. Another one of the benefits of holding poses so long like this is that we get to help the circulation. And so even thinking of that flow and that water element that we're discussing, think of how even the circulation in our body is that. It's that flow, it's that healthy movement. And without it, you know, literally we would not survive very long, probably not longer than a couple of minutes. And so we need that flow, we need the motion, that gentle movement inside of our body constantly flowing. So thinking of that, what areas of your life feel stagnant right now? What areas have no flow? Are any of those areas that have come to our mind's eye with stagnation? How can we introduce a little bit more flow to it, given what we're given right now? We're in a situation where we can't physically go out and see a lot of our friends that we might have been able to normally. And so maybe how can we reach out to those people? How can we strengthen our relationships where we're at? How can we find a greater amount of peace where there's just been stuck energy? Let's take one more huge breath here. And then as we gradually rise up, plant your hands and use the straightening of the arms to help support your spine as it rises all the way up. Once our spine is stacked, take a cycle where we inhale, bring the heart forward, and exhale, heart backward. Another time, feel that arch, and feel the round. Even finding that gentle flow into our very spine. So we're heading into a frog pose from here. This is a pose where you can use the bolster. It's not required. If you don't have soft carpet underneath you, oftentimes what I do before frog pose is curl the two long edges of the mat in so that my knees get a little bit of padding right underneath them. And so if that would be helpful, feel free to set that up. If you're on carpet, it should be perfectly fine. You can bring this bolster right up in front of us if you have it. Again, no stress if not. And we're setting up our legs so that the shins go straight back. So immediately behind you. You're not trying to make them go wide. You're not trying to make them go narrow. They're going directly back behind you. We're also setting the hips exactly at the same level of the knees. We're not going super forward, we're laying on our belly. We're not going super far back like the child's pose. We're being right in the middle, because this middle spot is where the muscles get the deepest stretch. So this is where we're tightest. So bring yourself into those cues, those positions. And if you're able to go down onto the elbows, you can go down onto elbows. If you have the bolster, this just makes it even a more restorative pose by giving you something comfortable to rest onto as the inner thighs open. If you have the bolster, one of my favorite things to do is scoot it close inward so that the chin can rest past the bolster. And so with all of that, we begin to breathe here. This is one of the more intense poses. So keep that breath going. And continuing our thought about stagnation, giving our mind something to dwell on rather than the intensity here. Think of that question that we were just considering. What can I do where I'm at? What do I have control over to help with my stagnation? If you're working on art, how can I include that in my days right now? If we're working on relationships, how can I reach out to those people given the situation I have? How can I make meaningful time? And maybe just reminding ourselves that it's okay to slow down right now. Oftentimes we think that if we're not working, if we're not constantly doing something, that, I don't know, we're wasting our life. I know I grew up the way that I was raised. I definitely took on that belief. And so know, with this slowing down, with this slower energy, this gentle, nourishing energy, it's okay to not be so rushed all the time. It's okay to find the slower flows, to not have to be rushing like a raging river, like a waterfall all the time. We can also find the calm streams and just be floating there. I'd like for us to take about 5 more deep belly breaths here. And after that 5th one, we're going to shift our weight forward until the hips can rest forward. If you have the bolster, you can keep it or just scoot it off to the side as you lower your hips all the way down to the ground. Lifting the feet up behind you, let yourself swing them left and right like little windshield wipers. Feel how we're loosening the fascia that was just pulled extremely tight. Take one more set. And then from here, we'll work our way up to a sitting position. If you folded the edges of the mat in, let them open right back out. Coming all the way to sit. We're going to let the left shin rest down onto the ground. Take a moment cradling out this right shin, giving it 3 or 4 good rocks, left and right. And then we're going to place this right shin immediately on top of the left shin. We want to make sure that we're flexing both feet. There's some activity going on there that makes it so we don't just collapse the ankle. That would weaken the tissue. That would weaken that connection. So flexed feet, shins stacking. If your hip lifts up weird here, it's not quite open enough to do the stacked version, just come down to cross-legged instead and you'll feel the stretch. So from here, lift your posture up tall. That's our first step. Gently begin to tilt forward. Our fingers reach the ground and find this gentle progression, walking the hands forward one step at a time until we found a good hip and glute opener going on that right side. You found that. Try to relax and breathe into it. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if there's ever a moment where you suddenly realize I'm not really feeling anything anymore, that's when I invite you to re-straighten your spine. Play with going deeper. Maybe your edge has shifted. And isn't that an interesting principle of life? We don't have the same edge all the time. And this goes for us as a collective humanity as well as individuals. If we had the same edge all the time, there would be no progress. There would be nothing to look forward to, nothing to work for. A person who's working on track and field, they're working on hurdles and they only ever do the low heights. They don't get that really good form that's required to get to the tall ones. Similarly, as the collective, think of when humanity broke the 5-minute mile. That was thought impossible for quite a long time. And then as soon as one person broke it, within the next several years, more and more people began to break it because they realized, oh, what I thought was impossible, I guess isn't. So I can do that too. And that's powerful to me, realizing that the edge isn't solid. We can always explore with where our energy wants to go. And that's one of the things that makes life the most beautiful. It's something that leads us to have passion for our activities, passion for our life. So continue these really good deep inhales and exhales. Another good breath in and out. Start to plant the hands. Our hands are what supports us up. We don't just rise, jerking ourselves back up after such a deep, long stretch. We take our time walking the hands back up. From here, plant both of the feet narrow and then take a few windshield wipers left and right. I want us to notice the difference between narrow and wide. And so after the next side, we're going to go wider so that we can experience that contrast. So take maybe 2 more to each side. Once we finished, our right leg rests down first this time. We hold on to the foot and the knee, giving it 3 or 4 good rocks. And with that loosening up, we stack this shin on top or drop it in front. Both feet are flexed and active. Our posture goes nice and tall at first. And take that gradual time, relaxing back into side number 2. What does this side, what story does it have for us? I'm oftentimes surprised that my left and my right sides can be so different from one another. And so be with the body right now. Really feel into it. What's going on? How can I help? It's like that flowing of water. What can I build to be an aid. If I'm wanting my water to flow quicker through certain areas in life, all I have to do is start narrowing the channel. That naturally makes it go quicker. If I'm wanting things to go slower in life, widen the channel. If I'm wanting things to have a pause before it moves on, I build a little dam. And so play with this analogy in your mind. What is it about my flow through life right now that I can do something about? Where do I need the channel to be wider or narrower? Who do I need to build a little dam to be able to save water for a certain time? Also being careful, if we are damming up any areas, is that helpful? Because that can create stagnation, but sometimes that dam can be one of the most helpful in the short run. It's like giving ourselves a day off, giving ourselves the time to do self-massage, to take time out of our day to do yoga. It seems like that shouldn't help us because, you know, if we're taking on that busy mentality, we're actually taking an hour, having an hour less in our day by doing this. But really by doing that, we're refreshing ourselves. We're filling ourselves with so much more energy to meet our efforts with grace. We've got our last 3 breaths. Keep the belly flowing in and out, deep and full. After that 3rd breath, a nice slow rising up, the hands plant, we gradually walk us back in, picking up our knees. This time let's go super wide, at least as wide as the mat, if not more. And then both knees fall to one side, both knees fall to the other. Feel how this affects you, clear up to the bone connections. Take a few more to each side. When that feels pretty good, our next couple of poses are going to be a little bit more active. So you're going to feel like you're working. Remember that if it's too much effort, you can always drop down a level or 2 to make it not quite so hard. Or you can be right there at the edge still. So play with your body, what is most helpful. As we're getting into this next shape, I'd like us to start off first with a moment with downward facing dog. So tuck the toes, lift the hips, just pedal the legs out for a moment. Let the left leg begin to float up to the sky. And then step that left foot to the outside of the left hand. As soon as you've got that in place, the back knee can drop down. And we're going to start off with a lizard pose. And this, I'll give you an opportunity shortly to have an option to go a little bit deeper if your body wants to go deeper. But we all start off with lizard. Lizard can be done up on hands like this as we rest our hips forward. It can also be done with the right elbow going down to the ground, maybe even left elbow. So we're starting off right here. Breathing deep and full. Feel how we're getting into new areas of the hips from here. We're getting into the front of the right hip, a bit more through the side of that back hip. Keep our breath flowing. And if we want to start evolving our pose to help that left hip go even more external, what we would start doing now is begin turning those left toes a bit further out to the left. Flex that foot like we did before so that we're not collapsing the ankle. You can stay down onto the right elbow and then continue to try dropping the right hip further and further to the ground. From here, you've got a few areas to play with. The first option is that left hand continues to push that left knee more and more open. That can feel really good on the hip. Or you could also take that left hand and rotate it all the way behind you. So even the very spine is rotating to help out the hip. So either variation is absolutely fine. Take a few more moments right here just to be with the breath. Last 3 deep inhales and exhales. After that third exhale, begin to work your hands to plant again. When you've lifted them all the way up, this front foot steps back. And again, we take a moment to be with our downward facing dog. Tucking with the toes, lifting the hips up nice and high to the sky. If pedaling feels really helpful, you can take that version, or just find this lift of the hips upward. Right leg starts to reach all the way upward. Step the right foot to the outside of right hand. The back knee can lower. And this first variation is the lizard. So we can absolutely be on hands. You could drop down to left elbow, maybe right elbow. If the ground's just slightly too low, this could be a place where the bolster could come in, grabbing onto that to add just slightly more height. And here's where we can start evolving the pose if that feels like the best option for us. Moving the left elbow down, the left hip makes its way down. Right toes can turn a little bit off to the side, flexing that foot. Either bring the right hand to the inner knee, helping to push that leg open, or take that hand all the way behind you, spiraling the spine. Let's find the best way to open this leg and this hip today. our final 3 breaths here, make them deep and full. It's like our reservoirs of water have expanded from this practice. Begin to come out, coming to the hands, bring the leg back. Another moment with downward facing dog, letting the legs lengthen. Eventually lower down to the knees and then come all the way down onto the hips again. The next pose is going to be another one that we'll start off with one variation, and halfway through I'll give you an option to go deeper if you wish. So we start off with the left shin making its way parallel toward the top of the mat. So the left knee is to the left toes are to the right. So making itself nice and square, and then the right leg is tucked back. From here, we're going to work our way to leaning forward, helping to open the hips that way. The easier variation, if our hips are pretty tight, is to see the angle that the thigh is pointing toward, and then begin to walk your torso down to that angle, that wider left angle. The way to go slightly deeper is to bring your torso over the direction of the middle of the shin. So basically coming square up to the top of the mat. It's okay for the back hip to be lifting just a little bit, but we don't want it to be completely rocked over to that side. And so this is the first part of the pose. We'll give ourselves some time right here. And then for the second half, people are welcome to stay here, or I'll give you a variation. Feel the very different areas of the hips that are getting this experience. Another huge breath. And from here, if we wish to go deeper to evolve this pose, we'll take it into swan, or essentially a full pigeon pose. This right leg continues to lengthen all the way to the back of the mat. Make sure that we don't just stay here leaning off to this one side crookedly. Rather, we then pick the hips up and make the hips level to the ground, right over both of our hips. Always know the placements that you can use of the bolster here. You could scoot the bolster up under that left hip, or you could even bring your bolster right up and hug onto it as you lean down, making it very restorative, very comfortable. So whatever we're doing, we're breathing and opening to this experience in our bodies. One more huge inhale. A nice exhale. And then planting our hands, we rise up, rock onto that left hip. Take a moment with both legs opening wide off to each side. With the hands planting behind you, just let the legs jiggle. A little bend to one knee at a time. Lengthening up tall, a brief moment, sliding both hands forward. And then when we slide back in, we'll take the second side. So this one will be with the right shin parallel to the front. The left leg will be the one that tucks back. Know that if your foot can't keep the toes pointed, you can always flex the foot. It's whatever makes the joints comfortable. And from here, remember the easier angle is to go off to that angle that the right thigh is pointing to. The slightly deeper is to go directly forward over the shin. So making our way to our pose and focusing on our breath from here. Another huge inhale and exhale. Listening to this hip, if it's willing to go deeper, we can begin to straighten that left leg long behind us. Remember, pick your hips up and set them evenly over both bones. If you used the bolster before, perhaps you use it again in the same way. Right up under that right hip or out in front of you is a comfortable way to rest all the way down. Last huge inhale. Beautiful exhale. Working our way onto our hands. We press our way all the way up. Coming out the same exact way. Both legs start to open. Planting hands behind, let the legs be jiggly. Rising up tall, take a brief moment, sliding both hands all the way forward. And all the way back up. Picking up the knees, take a moment with cobbler's pose, bottoms of the feet touch together. Posture lifts up tall. We begin to tilt forward. Know that if you can't stay tall from that beginning spot, just have your hands behind. That could be your variation for today. If you're going decently deep, maybe your bolster could be something comfortable to rest onto. either stacking hands, even making the bolster a little bit at the taller height if you'd like. Just find a good, comfortable way to be in this cobbler pose. This is our last full pose that we're holding for that full 3 minutes. This is the last one of the day. And so here is a good moment for us to connect to any bits of intuition that we've gained through our practice today. What is it that popped into our mind regarding stagnation and how we can help with that? Regarding how we can focus our flow? Regarding different areas of our life that need creativity? Here we connect to our passion, never letting ourselves feel or fall victim to any circumstances, rather knowing that if we connect to our passion, that will automatically give us the purpose, the oomph for going forward. And people love passion, they feel it. It's almost, there's a story that I heard once, just a short little tale, and it goes like this. If you chase after the god of wealth, you're always going to be several steps behind her. But if you chase after the goddess of passion, the goddess of wealth can't help but get jealous and follow you. Not to say that wealth is necessarily why we do things, but it's helping us know that we can have sufficient for our needs by being passionate, by living our deepest version of our life, by not necessarily living the life that everybody's expected for us. And so take this next minute or so just to be with your intuition. What is my passion? What brings meaning to my life? What is it that my intuition is urging me to do or to become? Our last huge inhale, a beautiful long exhale. Find yourself planting the hands, walking your way back up. And as we rise, we lift the knees. We let the legs do a few more windshield wipers. You choose narrow or wide feet. When that feels good, we'll go onto our backs. When there, we take a little happy baby pose to help our body continue to get into that open, relaxed shape. With this happy baby grabbing onto outside edges of feet, you're welcome to be completely still for about 30 seconds or so. Or you're welcome to add motion, either rocking left and right, giving that low back a massage. My personal favorite thing to do, straighten one leg up to the sky and straighten the other, helping to loosen up anything that's been tight. So take this next several breaths to give our body one last kindness, whatever it's asking for right now. And as that begins to feel complete, find yourself resting into our Shavasana pose. If you ever need the bolster under your knees to help the low back feel nice, that's absolutely fine. flat can also be really nice. Arms can be open on the ground, or we can rest them onto that low abdominal area where the sacral chakra is. Imagining that with that light touch, that gentle warmth, we can help add more health and wellness to this chakra we've worked so deeply on today. All we have to actually do for this next several minutes is just let our breath be deep and full. So begin that process, that journey right now. Begin to deepen the inhales and the exhales. Introduce little movements back to fingers and toes, ankles and wrists. Stretching out like we're waking up first thing in the morning. Eventually rolling over to a nice fetal position on one side, one hip stacking on top of the other hip. And we're going to take 3 or 4 breaths before we rise up to a comfortable seated place. Eventually, as we begin to rise all the way up, we'll join our hands together in front of the heart. And once again, we connect with our sacral chakra, this energy of passion, creativity, relationships, and any intuitive hits that we've been given during our class regarding our next steps forward. Make that commitment here and now. I will act on those to help strengthen and bring power to that solar plexus, to that sacrum. And so with all of this, with this beautiful, beautiful intention to lead us forward, let's wrap up this wonderful time that we got to share together this morning with a sound of Om. Inhaling together now. Om. May we be filled with light and happiness and peace. Namaste.